Hello. A good afternoon to everyone who is joining. Please, if you are hearing me clearly and you are not having a problem with my visuals, if you can wave, I would appreciate it. I assume the last time we tried to do this, we were facing some connection problems. I'm hoping today we won't have that problem. So generally, I guess some people will join us as we continue with the discussion on the authorship of the Nelson Mandela World Human Rights Moot cases. In any event, we are also going to try to save this discussion. So for those who probably won't be able to be joining us, they'll be able to access it. To those who are already online, what I would want to start by saying is that in the discussion which I'm going to have with you in regards to the authorship of the Nelson Mandela World Moot, if you have questions, please do feel free to write them in the comment section. I will try as much as I can to be able to respond to some of those questions. But generally, let me start saying by bidding you my warm greetings to you, everybody who is participating in the Nelson Mandela World Human Rights Moot Court competition, be it that you are a student or you are a faculty member who are advising the student in this awesome Moot Court competition. I hope that I find you and your beloved ones safe, in particular in these difficult times of COVID-19. So I appreciate for those who will be able to participate with us today. Generally, a few days ago, we attempted to have a discussion with Ed on the issue of authorship of the Nelson Mandela World Human Rights Moot. And as I've already mentioned, we were experiencing some problems. So today, what I'm going to try to do, what I'll try to do today, is give perhaps some sort of a summary of some of the main points that we attempted to discuss that day. So my conversation is structured perhaps in 4 ways. The first one, I'll just maybe give a reference to my personal experience with moot court competitions. Then the second one, I will discuss the authorship, the process of writing the Nelson Mandela moot court competition cases. And this will be followed by then the discussion about some of the tips or some of the questions which you have been giving to us, which I think maybe you need to pay attention to as in terms of sources, so to say. Then lastly, I will try to discuss with you why I think, perhaps of course I'm biased, participation in the Nelson Mandela World Human Rights Moot Court competition is a good thing or a fantastic thing. So generally, without wasting much time, myself, I will consider myself to be a product of moot court competitions, having participated basically in almost all the moot court competitions that were presented at my faculty of law. Starting, for example, with the one that is presented by the International Committee of the Red Cross on International Humanitarian Law, that is the law of armed conflict, and representing also not only at the national level but regional level in moot court competitions such as the All Africa Human Rights Moot Court competition that is presented by the Center for Human Rights, and the JESUP moot court competition on international law, that including the international rounds in Washington, D.C. So what I learned is that through my participation in those moot court competition, there are many things which I learned, which I think I would not have been able to acquire only in the classroom. But that bit of the importance of participating in moot court competition, I want to discuss it a little bit later. I want to focus first on the important part, the process of writing of the Nelson Mandela World Moot Hypothetical Cases, particularly how themes are chosen, how we focus on the jurisdiction of the imaginary court, and who participate in the contribution of ideas. So what basically starts with every year, in as far as themes are concerned, human rights experts, most of them who are our partners, contribute on ideas as to which themes which we can be able to focus on each particular year. and they usually choose themes that are trending or that are current in our real life. So after those themes have been agreed upon, for example, currently we're actually having a discussion on whether the 2021 case should include, for example, the problems, human rights issues that comes with the COVID-19 and the regulation or the way states are responding to this pandemic. So after experts are agreeable on which themes to include, the process that follows now is me trying to choose how to tell the story, which includes some flesh both for the applicant and for the respondent. So normally we have 4 issues in each hypothetical case, and of those 4 issues I always try to make sure that they are related to each other, so it's easier usually to choose a family who are affected in various ways to make to ensure that we have some kind of golden thread running through our story. So the first thing would then be to draft a first draft of the story, which I then submit to the experts who are participating, or the steering committee, so to say, who then put their own input. And after putting their own input, they return back the first draft, which I will look at again and try to incorporate the additions which they'll be suggesting, after which we return again for another round of discussions until everyone is agreeable to say this is the case which we are having in that particular year. So some of you have been asking questions actually in regards to issue. I think I usually see questions about jurisdiction, because comparably, I think what I need to explain here, comparably, when you're looking at other moot court competitions, especially the regional moot court competition, the All Africa Human Rights competition, for example, the European Court of Human Rights competition, or the Inter-American, it is usually easier because the jurisdiction of the court is already known. So there's no creation. You don't have to create any some sort of jurisdiction. You simply say jurisdictions in terms of the Inter-American Court, or the jurisdiction in terms of the European Court of Human Rights. But the issue is a bit different with the World Moot, because we try to make it global. It's not regional. So when I'm creating the path or the storyline around the issue of jurisdiction of the court, whatever name we choose in each particular year, is to try and make sure that we take different components from different regions. So, for example, I may look at what the jurisdiction of the African court says, and then take another bit from the European court and another bit from the Inter-American, or just have the jurisdiction, for example, from the European court, and then have admissibility issues being similar to that of the African court. So the idea here is to try and make sure that it's truly global. The court before which students will be arguing is global in as far as its reach is concerned in terms of procedures. So why I think this is an important part of the World Moot, it becomes inclusive. So to those, for example, who are interested in comparative human rights, I've heard many students explaining that, before I participated in the World Moot, I didn't know how the African court operated, or someone from Africa saying I didn't know how the Inter-American court operate. So when we include various components from these different regional courts, it forces students to then try and read around and research issues that are found in other parts of the world, which are not necessarily the regions they are coming from. And I think that is particularly really a rewarding experience in most cases. So now I want to go and try to have some of the pointers in relation to the questions which people were asking. And before I start these pointers, so to say, I want to mention that in terms of the rules of the Nelson Mandela Moot Court competition, I can only give you hints to a certain extent, because the idea to begin with is to encourage students to do their own research. But since I've seen many questions, for example, coming from students saying that where is this inspiration coming, and we are thinking that perhaps if we try to direct you to where some of the major issues in the current case of 2020 are coming from, it may enrich your approach or the discussions which we'll end up having in Geneva, that is in case your team qualifies for the oral rounds. So I want particularly to start, as you know, that one of the issues that we have in the 2020 case relates to the rob of the Galapagos, the Isle of Penguins. So you know the penguinatics, who believe in their religion, they believe they have this their dress, which is called the robe of the Galapagos, and has resulted in some of the issues which are contentious in the 2020 case. And the case which I would particularly want to refer you to and to familiarize yourself with, because if you happen to qualify and come to Geneva, the judges, including myself, will be questioning you mostly in regards to these particular cases, and wanting to hear perhaps your thoughts on them and how you may be able to distinguish them if that's what needs to be done. So there is the case of Sonia Yanka versus France, which is a 2018 case. And Sonia spelled Sonia and Yanka Yaker versus France, which was decided, and this is more of a communication actually. It was decided in 2018 by the Human Rights Committee. For those who may not know what the Human Rights Committee is, this is the treaty body, quasi-judicial body at the United Nations, which comprises of 18 experts who are chosen. And some of you, I think if you look at our timeline of the World Moot, you see that there's Professor Christoph Haynes, who is the founder of the Nelson Mandela World Human Rights Moot. He is actually a member of the Human Rights Committee, the United Nations Human Rights Committee, which I'm referring to. So in 2018, they made a decision in regards to the case of Sonia Yanka versus France, and it included this idea of a particular religion in their particular dress, and someone who had been prohibited from wearing that, and actually perhaps charged for having violated principles of living in community or endangering the public safety, etc. But what is interesting is that I also want you to then consider the case of SAS, all in capital letters, versus France again, and this is a 2014 case, which was decided by the European Court of Human Rights. And what you would note is that the facts before the SAS versus France and the facts before Sonia Yanka versus France, and this is the same state which was being accused of human rights violations, are the same. The facts are the same. Yet the ruling in the two cases are different. So in the case of SA versus France, you find that the European Court of Human Rights, which is a regional body, which is a regional court, rules that the prohibition of wearing of certain religious dress is actually a violation of human rights, and they list those rights which are it's not a violation. Forgive me, it's not a violation of those rights. So the European Court says there has not been violation. Actually, there is a balance. Although I think there are dissenting opinions from two judges in that particular case, but the majority ruled in favor of France. Then a few years later, 2018, same facts or similar facts, so to say, we have a different ruling in Sonia Yanka versus France from an international body at the UN now, saying actually there is a violation of human rights. And now, the question, because you are coming before the Terra Elada Human Rights Court, you will be expecting, as judges, will be asking you questions regarding these two cases to say, why should I be persuaded by one case and not the other? We have a regional body or a regional court having made some pronouncements regarding similar issues. And the same country now involved at the United Nations, another human rights judicial quasi body, which is comprised of human rights experts, makes a different ruling. How do we proceed in such circumstances? So the major question which you face is to say, as applicant, of course, you'll be citing one case and say, this is why we think the court should rule in our favor, and the respondent perhaps will be referring to the regional decision. But as you may know, both the decisions that are made in this particular case are not binding on this on the Terra Ladder Court of Human Rights. The question then will be, how should be the court persuaded? So I would expect those who qualify to come to the regional round, to the international rounds or the final rounds in Geneva, to have familiarized themselves with these cases, because on that particular issue, that will be an issue which will be asked. So I promise to give you two particular sources where I think many questions will come, and these are the first issue, and the one which I also want to refer to. As you know that in the 2020 case, one of the underlying issue is the issue of misinformation and disinformation on the count of digital technologies, where people are editing videos and putting out fake news out there. So it being hard to distinguish what is the truth and what is happening. And also there is an issue of freedom of expression versus the aspect of prohibition of discrimination or incitement to violence or incitement to discrimination. And one of the things which human rights experts from the UN will be expecting you to understand and to be quizzing you on is what I want to refer to, or what is called the Rabat Plan of Action of 2013. If you have not heard about it, or if you have not researched on it so far, the Rabat Plan of Action was a result of a number of expert meetings which were held by states, and the last one being held in 2012, I think, in Morocco, Rabat. That's where the Rabat spelled R-A-B-A-T, Rabat Plan of Action. And if you go on the United Nations website, you actually find that plan of action, and it in particular details, various tests of what distinguishes between hate speech or incitement to violence, or incitement to discrimination, and what constitutes freedom of expression and other things like that. So we would ordinarily be questioning you as judges, or expecting you actually to have mastered or understood some of the points or some of the tests that have been actually made or explained in that particular Rabat Plan of Action. So that's what I can say on the sources which I recommend that you should read and familiarize yourself with. Of course, with other issues which people were asking to say, what were the inspiration? For example, Mother Penguin, who is on the island of Penguin, and you're having penguinatics saying that we are facing starvation because that statue is not back home, or it's not where it belongs. Of course, such stories were inspired. I think some of you are aware of the current debates, especially of museums in many European countries. About stolen artifacts, in particular those which were stolen from Africa, and the debate whether such should be returned. And there's been much pressure and debates about that, to say, should they be returned? Are they safe? If you Google around that, Google can be your friend on that. You find some of those discussions and what it actually means in general to the other facts which are found in the case. And of course, we have also the issue of artificial intelligence technologies. What you need to appreciate is that the impact of artificial intelligence technologies, in particular in the human rights project, have got far-reaching consequences, which sometimes, to some extent, do alter our thinking or our human rights philosophy or our understanding of what human rights are. So you specifically, for example, find two issues, or three perhaps, which are found in that particular case of 2020. For example, gene therapy, or the cure to some proposed cure to blindness. The debate or the ethical questions, legal and ethical questions, which you'll be expected to have maybe at least read around and try to master, go to these aspects where we question to say, with people living with disabilities, they always, unfortunately, sometimes an assumption on the part of governments, even with those who advocate for human rights, there is always sometimes an assumption that we know what is best for them. And I think one of the quotes which I use in the case is the one which a blind person is saying that, why is there an assumption from people who can see that they see the world better than us? Metaphorical as it may seem, but the idea is to say that when we, for example, articulate this idea of best interest of the child in the case, are we coming from a place of knowledge or from a place of assumptions? So those are some of the philosophical questions which are being raised in terms of that particular issue. But also in terms of that technology, which is another example where I say, with artificial intelligence technologies, there's this question whether certain, applications may end up performing tasks, that make them in a certain way seem as if they are humans, or performing tasks that have always been performed by humans. What does that mean? What does that mean for human rights? And where we tried to crystallize that was at the point where we are saying our understanding from the word go of violation of rights is that they belong to humans, right? And you have now someone who is saying that a police officer, under the belief that a robot which is operating like a human is a human, then applies lethal force. And I even feel uncomfortable by saying lethal force, because lethal means killing. Usually lethal, you're referring to the killing of a human. But they use lethal force, in other words, live ammunition. The question becomes, has there been a violation of the right to life? Those are the questions which I also say you need to be considering. Has there been a violation of the right to life? Do we need to have death? Should a human die for there to be a violation of the right to life? And coupled again in that idea of the effect of AI technologies or digital technologies, we already had, I think it was in Spain, where there is proof that with the current technologies that are being introduced, people are able to articulate or to try and protest for their rights in other ways which states have never anticipated before. So you have, for example, someone having a procession or a protest using holograms. It happened in Spain actually already, using holograms to make protests. And there are laws that prohibit or that regulate, how you conduct protests. The question is that person considered to be protesting? Should that be governed under the laws which interact already on the rights to freedom of assembly and other things like that? So these are some of the issues which, in general, we are trying to make sure that we are alive to some of the developments, in particular as far as the rise of technologies which has got an impact on human rights, so to say. Now, having given those examples, I would want maybe I don't want to continue being long-winded. I would want maybe to end on this note, where to say on some questions which you have asked on issues of clarification. I think I said this when I was discussing with Ed. I'm not sure if you heard that part. For those who are asking questions relating to clarifications, there is a process which we follow. If you have a question which needs a clarification of fact, I cannot perhaps do it in this video because not everyone is on Instagram. Not everyone is going to see this video. So it would be safer for you to write the request for clarification, whose deadline has actually been extended, and then I'll respond to that. And if it's a clarification that is that of fact that needs to be clarified, it will be definitely clarified. And some of you have seen that in most of our responses, when you pose the question, we need clarification on this, sometimes the response which you get like statements like, this is for counsel to plead, or this is for counsel to make argument. What is that trying to tell you is that perhaps what you're thinking is not clear was a deliberate way of constructing that particular fact. In other words, there is an argument which you should potentially make in as far as that particular fact is concerned. So look closely. Whenever you see the response being that no clarification need. This is for counsel to plead. Try to look at what exactly are we trying to get at. Perhaps that's where your argument lies. Now, in ending this note again of saying why I think it is fundamental or very important or beneficial for many people to actually share the idea of participating in the Nelson Mandela World Human Rights Moot Court competition, beside the fact that it is the biggest human rights moot court competition. Remember I gave reference to the other regional moot court competition, but this one is the biggest. It's the global one, and it happens at the human rights capital in Geneva, at the human rights Palais Nations, where you not only that week, you not only participate in the moot itself, but you get to see how the United Nations work, in particular the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights and other important organizations that work in the protection of human rights. But additionally, as you have already noted, as I was saying, various ideas, especially for the master's students or for those who are writing dissertations or in their final years, ideas of which thesis or which areas of research you may be interested in, you actually get them in this moot, interacting with your fellow students or fellow colleagues or fellow professors who will be in attendance. They always give fantastic, advice on which actually areas you can actually focus on to research. But generally, perhaps to end, I think I once said this with. Nelson Mandela, actually, the moot is called the Nelson Mandela World Human Rights Moot Court Competition. You would note that, Nelson Mandela once said, in particular referring to this issue of moot court competition, to say, as far as human rights is concerned, one could hardly think of a better way by which to advance the cause of human rights, but in a circumstance where law students from across the globe, in particular, who are the future leaders, the future lawyers, future professors, and or advocates of human rights, so to say, meet in a situation of a courtroom, and advance themselves or argue on human rights issues in a friendly but yes, fierce manner, which is, it's if you are interested at all in the advocacy of human rights, for example, or human rights litigation, participating in the Nelson Mandela Human Rights Moot Court competition is actually a thing to do. And if I may actually once again end with what Mr. Zaid Hussein once said, the former Human Rights Commissioner, UN Human Rights Commissioner, who was Human Rights Commissioner from 2014 to 2018. In particular, him commenting on the hypothetical cases which we've been writing for this moot court competition. He noted that, of course, when you're looking at these hypothetical questions, they are of course fiction, but the issues which are raised in those hypothetical cases are serious, because they do involve, for example, the subjugation of women, the oppression of minority groups, the eruption of violence, the displacement of family, many other human rights violations actually are mirrored in the hypothetical cases. And in particular, Virginia Woolf, commenting on the issue of fiction, she once said that, fiction is indeed like a spider's webs, attached, slightly perhaps, but still attached at all four corners of life. And the events which we raise in these moot court competitions are really anchored on the realities of human rights situations across the globe, which are experienced in the world. So the human rights violations, as the former High Commissioner was saying, are not random at all, and they are not accidents. They are generally, the consequence of, political, economic, social, and cultural inequalities. And while we actually know that, people will have a lot of fun in Geneva, meeting different people, growing professional contacts, it's a chance actually also to debate, on serious human rights issues of our times. And sometimes I once, I also referred to the views of Philip Alston, who said that, the one of the things that can save the human rights project is the open discussion of hearing of both sides of arguments as far as human rights protection is concerned, especially in the populistic world which we live today, where the human rights project is currently and constantly threatened and challenged. And if leaders of tomorrow are actually to save or to continue strengthening the human rights project, I think the World Human Rights Moot competition is not a bad start. So on that point, I would want actually to end there and encourage anyone, if you have any questions which you may want to ask, please do feel free to continue asking. We will be able to assist in any possible way. Please continue staying safe, and we actually hope that we'll be able to meet in Geneva in December for the final rounds, or the championship rounds for the Nelson Mandela World Human Rights Moot Court competition. Of course, some of you may already know that a number of Moot Court competitions, or many events, so to say, have been cancelled. For example, the Inter-American Moot Court competition, where I was actually supposed to participate as a judge, which was supposed to happen this May actually, was cancelled. The Jessup Moot Court competition, again, which involved some of the issues which I focus on in my career, that is autonomous weapon systems, or also known as killer robots. They included that issue in the Jessup International Law Moot Court competition, was also cancelled because of COVID-19. So you would note that actually for this year, the Nelson Mandela World Human Rights Moot Court competition actually would be perhaps maybe the only major human rights moot court competition that we have this year. The reason why you should be there, encourage other universities which you may know, which may not be participating, to say this is the place to be. Ladies and gentlemen, or should I say gentle ladies and men, thank you very much for your time. And anybody who need any assistance to this, please don't feel embarrassed at all. Just reach out. We can be able to assist in every way possible. We hope to meet you soon, and that we'll be able to have fun together at the Nelson Mandela. Thank you.